to Flat Earth United. Joining me this evening will be Lee Harris of YouTube channel Headlines Debunked. This is the behind the scenes part of the show, so I've literally just fired out my invitation to Lee. He'll hopefully join us in the next few minutes. In the meantime, what I think I'll do is actually play out one of his videos. I'll go across to my guess the movie screenshots, so you can play that while I queue up one of his videos. Lee hasn't been making videos for a very long period of time, but he certainly caught my eye quick enough for me to want to get him on. Let's just bring up his channel. Let's show this to you all. So this is Headlines Debunked. This is front page. 340 subscribers. Outrageous. Needs a lot more. And I'm going to scroll through just so you can see what's on there to date. His first video was, I think it was back in June. See if I'm right. Gas explosion 2 months ago. Yeah, it'd be about June-ish. And I'm going to play out, let's see, I shared one with Critical Thinking Always. I think it was this one, the flu vaccine scam. Is your child safe? So I'm going to stick myself on mute and play that. Hopefully, our guests will join this by the time this is played out. It's about 10 or 15 minutes long, I believe. So I'll stick that on now.
Of the year, with the kids sniffling and sneezing and coughing and wheezing, it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's the live vaccine for flu. It spreads with holiday greetings and happy meetings when their friends are at school. It's the live vaccine for flu. There'll be illness for profit, no parent to stop it, and infection spreading all over the school. There'll be a scary fake story and tales of how gory a world without vaccines long ago. The most wonderful time of the year, or at least it should be, especially for children, with the majority of school children going back to their respective institutes over the next coming weeks. It's time to consider the big thing that's coming up, especially in the UK, which is the flu vaccine season. And I think it's the same in the US as well, and perhaps other areas of the westernized world. But there's something very sinister about the flu vaccine for children that I'm going to very briefly cover today and just explain to you. What I really want is for you just to open your eyes as to how this thing actually works and the reason why it's been introduced so widely into schools, when certainly in the past it was never the case at all. For a long time, the flu vaccine has been available for children, but you would have to make an appointment at your GP surgery to have that done. Now, the health organisations are offering it throughout schools, absolutely free, hassle-free. They're at school anyway, we'll just vaccinate them at the same time. But from Public Health England, their figures, they say that last winter, the vaccine reduced the risk of flu in children by 66%. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, and you may disagree with me, but I think that's abysmal. 66% as a success rate. In this day and age, we're told how fantastic vaccines are and just how far medical science has come and just how essential vaccines are. I would expect every vaccine on that basis to have a success rate, well, around 90%, or certainly in the 90s, or even higher. 100% success rate, but certainly at least 90%. 66%. To me, that's not good at all. And in fact, in adults, the success rate last year was 40%. That's what Public Health England are saying. That's their own figures. A 40% success rate in adults. You can't even seriously take that vaccine and say to yourself, well, there's at least half a chance it'll work. Because there isn't. It's less than half. Same with children as well. When you're allowing your children to receive this influenza vaccine, you can only really say to yourself, well, there's just over half a chance that it will work. That's not good at all. That's bad. And people do say to me, well, sometimes you put so much sarcasm into your videos, it doesn't sound like you take your content seriously at all. Well, it's because of things like this. It's a joke. 66% and 40% success rates in a vaccine that we're told is essential to take every year. Absolute joke. We're spoken to like children. We're treated like children. We're given childlike articles. And it's ridiculous. But this whole story gets even better. Professor John Macaulay, who leads the influenza research at the Francis Crick Institute in London, he made a fantastic comment that really leads into this story perfectly. He said children are known to be super spreaders of flu. Just going to say that again. Children are known to be super spreaders of flu. Just remember that, because it's really important to the story as to why this vaccine is now pushed so widely in schools. And back to Public Health England for a second. They actually said to the BBC, vaccines are the best defence we have against flu. What? Let's just reanalyse that. So vaccines are the best defence we have against flu. These are the vaccines that in children only have a 66% success rate. These are the vaccines that in adults only have a 40% success rate. And Public Health England are saying that this is the best protection that we have against flu. Okay, so not a sensible and healthy diet then. Not vitamins and minerals from fruits and vegetables. Not making sure that you take on board all the key food groups. No, that's not the best protection against flu. The best protection is our vaccines that we buy in for you. 66% success and 40% success, respectively. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, if that doesn't ring alarm bells, then I don't really know what will. But if it has rung some alarm bells, keep listening, because here's the part where the children and the schools come into play. In the majority of cases, children will receive the nasal flu spray. Now, they can have the, your standard traditional injection into the arm. In the UK, that can be done on religious grounds. You can apply to have that, or health reasons as well. But for the majority of cases, it will be the nasal spray. It's the live vaccine, and children remain contagious for at least 1 week afterwards. It can be longer, up to 2 weeks. Now we go back to what the lead influenza researcher said, that children are super spreaders of the flu. Well, it makes perfect sense that they're the ones that are given the live vaccine, because they're the ones that remain contagious. Now, they do say that the influenza strain that's in this vaccine is a reduced strength, so it's not as powerful as what you would find as, perhaps maybe they would term it as, the organically found virus. If there is such a thing. Let's assume there is. Maybe there isn't. But nonetheless, so this strain is supposed to be not as powerful, but it is. It absolutely is. You'll witness this yourself if you have children in school. You don't have your children vaccinated because you don't want to take the risk of what's contained in these flu vaccines. You've perhaps watched one of my previous videos that I'll put a link in the description box to, where it was finally officially admitted that old stocks of the swine flu vaccine that was proven to cause narcolepsy in children and for many to commit suicide because of the misery that they subsequently suffered was used up and given to children and adults guised as the standard flu vaccine when it wasn't. That's not conspiracy, that's fact. Go and have a look at that video if you want to. You don't know what's in these vaccines. There's been countless cases here in Penzance at the local health centres where vaccines have been given out and it's been revealed later on that they were out of date. They were old stocks that shouldn't have been used. You can look through the list of ingredients in a vaccine. Absolutely. You can pick them apart. You can base your decision purely on what that ingredients list is. That's absolutely fine. Other people will say, no, I've looked at all the medical science behind these ingredients. They're absolutely safe. That again is absolutely fine. The point I'm making is, regardless of what the ingredients list is, you do not know what you and your children are being injected with. The people injecting you and your children don't even know what they are. They get them out of stocks from a fridge and cupboard. You don't know. You don't know what these are from the source manufacturer. You simply don't. And there's countless cases that prove this. You are playing roulette. Now, you might not mind that so much with your own life, but for your children, you really should think about it a little more carefully. And when there's a big push for a vaccine like the influenza vaccine, just ask the question, why are they pushing it so much? And have a look into it. And in this case, where it's pushed so heavily in the schools, where they want everyone to sign up to have it, this indicates to me, based on what was said from the lead researcher, that they know children spread the flu. They give them the live flu virus and they spread it. Your healthy child goes into school. You don't want to have the vaccine. You've made that decision. That's fine. There's a good chance now, in this day and age, in this flu season and the next one, that your child will come home with the flu.
How you doing, Lee? Can you hear me okay? There we go. Clicks and pops. Perfect. Can you say something? And I'll level you up. Oh, maybe you can't hear me. Can you hear me? And you... I don't know why I'm asking if you can hear me, because if you could hear me, you'd say. Can you hear me? Question mark. Because I can hear you. And my levels are bouncing, so I'm pretty sure it is going out to him. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Can't see the chat, can he? 'Cause he's on a phone. How can I get his attention? Do the international sign. Can you hear me?
Speak?
Yeah, I'm speaking. I can hear you.
You can hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Brilliant. All right. Yeah. No.
No?
No. For some reason. Hang on.
Check my level to see if the audience can hear him. Yeah, they can. Check, check, check. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check, check, check. 1 2 1 2. Nothing?
Can't hear you.
No? Can he see my messages? Look. Can you see this? think that's a no. Let's send him an email. Just need to tell him to drop and join again. And for all this behind the scenes lark. Lee Harris, reply. Try to drop and join. And if I hold this up to the screen.
Hang on, Nathan. Sorry, I can hear you now. I think that was an error on my end. Drop it. No, I can hear you now, mate.
Oh, you can hear me? Oh.
Yeah. I think
I'm making a right fool of myself.
Must have been something I was doing wrong at my
How's it
end.
going?
All right, mate. Not bad at all. How are you doing?
I'm very well indeed. Let's see how you look level-wise. I'm just going to go back to my sound menu. We will start the show proper once we've got all this bit sorted out.
No worries at all, mate.
Wrong thing.
Can't believe you played the video of me singing now.
Say again?
Can't believe you played the video of me singing.
Oh, the Christmas song. I love that video.
Yeah.
Very informative. Very informative.
Oh, cheers, mate.
No complaints from me. Now, I've asked a couple of people to play it. I don't know if you realise this or not, but when there's been live streams that I've got a moderator status in, I'll immediately just chuck them that video and say, please, can you play this? And they will.
Nice
so
one.
Hopefully it has a positive effect. We shall see. Can you just say a few words just so I can see how loud you are on the two feeds?
Yeah. Hello, Nathan. How are you? You all right?
And again?
Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're a bit quiet on
Hopefully
G.
the microphone's all right.
Yeah, you're a little bit quiet on G+, but you're perfect on OBS. Just once more.
Right, okay. Hello, Nathan. How are you?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Awesome.
I'll just ask the audience on OBS if... Oh, no, because they won't hear G+ till we start. So they're not going to know. You're definitely okay on G+, though. I can see your levels bouncing up and down and stuff. I'll just have to be... I'll have to make sure I mute regularly when you're talking. Okay.
Okay, mate.
Is there anything you want to know? I normally ask, admittedly off air, if there's anything guests specifically don't want to talk about, but as we're actually broadcasting now, that's quite a difficult question to answer.
No, nothing at all, mate. No, everything's fine.
I haven't got any questions planned specifically, so it's not like...
No, we'll just roll with it. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you need me to mute when I'm not talking, or is your setup all right? I'll just...
I paused to see if it gated you, and it didn't, so I might gate you a little bit, and then you won't need to worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm going quiet, not because I'm ignoring you, just because I'm checking that the gates worked, and I have to wait for the level to drop all the way back down to see if it's actually taken, if that makes sense. So I don't think either of us should really need to worry about muting, but I'll periodically check on the chat room and ask them, is the feedback, is the audio rubbish, etc., etc. But I don't think we need to concern ourselves. It's only really when you've got group shows that you have to worry about it a bit more. So this isn't a group show, so I don't think we need to worry too much. But as I say, if it becomes an issue, I'll either write you a message. Oh, you don't get them. Damn.
No,
so when I was trying to find out if you could hear me, I was just typing on the group chat.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't get it because you're on a phone.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense now. I thought we were just doing miming.
No. I was typing to you saying, can you read this? Can you see this? Can you hear me? And of course I can hear pops and crackles. So I know I could hear you, and I could even see the levels bouncing up and down. But right, it's 5 past. We might as well start this. I'll give you a brief introduction. So as I say, don't worry about mute initially. But I'll start the Hangout going. There'll be a small pause while I wait for them all to fire up, and then I'll just say, good evening, welcome to Flat Earth United. Joining me this evening is Lee Harris. And then if you can just say hello, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Cool. Right, I'll just check everything is hunky-dory. Check the chat is working. Where is that? Dashboard, there we go. Yes, we've even got some guests. Wonderful. Okay, let's start the actual live feed then. Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United. Joining me this evening is Lee Harris of YouTube channel. Well, you might as well introduce yourself, Lee. You go ahead. Tell him your channel name.
Lee Harris of Headlines Debunked. Thanks for having me on, Nathan. It's good to be here. Appreciate it, mate.
Well,
And thanks for giving me an excuse to stay up late as well.
Well, it captures a better audience. So if we sort of do it at this sort of time, we actually get a bit of an American audience, or we hope to get a bit of an American audience. Although a lot of the subjects you cover are specifically about British things, they're sort of universal across the pond. It's easy to translate what you're saying into American, if that makes sense. So it's relevant to both sides, if that makes sense. So I thought it would be useful to have an American audience too. I'm going to do my call to action, so you're not going to like this bit, but you'll do it on your channel and have been anyway. But if you're new to Nathan Oakley 1980, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification button so you get updates of all these wonderful interviews and group shows and vlogs and all the rest of it. On that note, how did you actually get into making videos on the subject of debunking headlines, Lee?
Well, I don't know. I think viewers can relate to the fact, sometimes you'll be sat at home and you'll see a headline or you read a news article and you'll think, now hang on a minute, that doesn't make sense. There's something wrong there. And something will click in your head. You might have heard information from somewhere else, and this headline is contradicting everything that you know. And you'll turn to speak to people. You want to tell a group of people, hang on, this isn't right. Something's going on here. And all right, you might have your partner next to you, and she'll understand. But apart from that, offline, people don't generally have a big group, a big audience to discuss these things with. So I just wanted to start the YouTube channel basically as I don't want to say vent, but it's just to put those ideas out there. I just want to use the channel to say to people, that thing that you've been told earlier, well, this and this completely contradicts it. It doesn't make sense. Did you realize that? Research into it and have a look for yourselves. So that's what I use the channel for, really, because I think we've got enough people on YouTube already who are experts at everything. People that tell us this is fact, 100%. This is the truth. There is no other way. There's plenty of people like that. But I think the best way to get through to people is just to plant the seed, is to give an idea and let them go and research it themselves and come to their own conclusions. And the conclusion they come to might completely be at odds with what you've said, but that's absolutely fine. But I do think waking people up to different ideas and different things that are going on is it's an individual thing to everyone. And in many ways, they've got to find their own way to come to their own conclusions. So that's what Headlines Debunked is all about. There was no specific reason for the title of the channel. Originally, it was just called Lee Harris, but I decided to give it some branding, make it a bit more recognizable. So Headlines Debunked, I wanted debunked in there because that's, a big part of what it does. Headlines, because I started off just literally by reading out headlines and just pointing out what I thought was wrong with bits and pieces in them. Because I do everything from a mobile phone. I haven't got a PC or a laptop. So all of my videos are done on the mobile phone. And you'll see as you go through the channel's uploads, as you go back, I think it's back to about June time, you'll see how the videos have changed and there's some experimenting going on there as well. Different topics, different styles of doing things, just to try and see what works, what connects with people, and what's really effective.
I watched your very first video today, and there's precious little new on YouTube. And your first video was like, it blew me away because it was something I'd never ever heard of. And you kind of, at the beginning of it, said, I might talk about the Grenville fire, but it's been covered to death. And I'm stealing your thunder here. Maybe if you explain what your first video was about, because to preface this, it opened my mind in terms of how headlines are presented. It's not necessarily the headline being complete nonsense, but why this headline over this headline. It was fascinating. So if you can explain your very first video, albeit with its slightly rough around the edges sound and all the rest of it, it was still interesting.
it was awful. You could hear my dog in the background. You could hear his collar jingling, and but luckily I've sorted those sorts of things out. But yeah, this was a gas explosion, New Ferry near Liverpool, and I came across this around the same time that Grenfell happened, and of course, like you said, I pointed out there was media coverage of Grenfell all over the place, but this particular gas explosion, you could see from the sort of sparse news articles that were around covering it, there was a lot of damage and a lot of people's lives had been affected. And I just really wanted to bring it to people's attention. So that's how the channel got going. It was just literally saying this event has happened. There was no real opinion on it. There was no research into it, but it was just bringing a headline to the forefront, and just thinking about these other people as well that had suffered, these people's homes that had been destroyed, because otherwise it was very area specific. So the Liverpool Echo covered it in great detail, but for the rest of the country, it's something that really didn't get they didn't get to see what was going on there. And from there, I branched out into more of the topics that I'm interested in, which range greatly from the usual NASA fakery, the Dino hoax, and then also onto the transgender agenda as well, and feminism. Just playing around with different bits and pieces, different topics, just trying to build a channel up really, because as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, when you first start a YouTube channel, you've got to put out a lot of content in the beginning to try and build an audience and sort of establish where you are, but also to build your style as well. And I'm getting there. It's still early days. I've discovered some topics that just simply don't work for me. That could be my presenting style, the audiences that I'm already connected with. Then there are other topics that really do work.
But as I said at the beginning, this is a fairly recent endeavour. What's taken you from not making videos to making videos? What's compelled you to do it?
Well, I found when I started it, it was something that I enjoyed primarily, and it was a way for me to put information out there. It's like I was sharing information with other people that I wouldn't usually be able to. And of course, we've got other social medias like Facebook and all the rest of it. But this was a more interactive, hands-on, and creative way to do it. And I don't get a lot of spare time, so the spare time that I do get, I just found this was very enjoyable. And there's so many different so many different styles that you can put into this. There's so many different ways on YouTube to get your message across once you sort of figure out certain types of software and things. And for me, it's on the phones. It's a little bit more difficult, but yeah, I just found it a fantastic way to get that info out there.
I mean, you say getting info out there, but you very light on conjecture. You tend to stick to the specifics of the headline and kind of invite your audience to make up their own conclusions. Yes, you're a little bit leading in places, but you can't help do that without presenting the information in the first place. But on the whole, 90%, you're not drawing conclusions for people. You're saying, go out and research this. There was something very... I know you're not a flat earther, so you may not know the flat earthy channels, but Jaron Campanella of Jaronism will often say, do your own research, don't trust me. And you kind of echo those sentiments in your videos. You're saying, don't trust me, this is just information that I found, go and research it. But in the case of, and I downloaded some of these actually, I can't remember the specifics, it was something medically related. I can't remember the actual video that you suggested to your audience to go and download the documents from the NHS website, but I did. I spent a good while actually reading through one of them specifically, and I was horrified. This isn't like conspiracy. It's their documents, first-hand information. What do you call it? Primary source information. And you've just got to read it. It terrified me to read about the control that the people that are making the decisions for the doctors. It's like we're a car on a service schedule. And occasionally the service schedule needs to be changed, and that means people have to be updated. But what was the video on? Which video am I talking about? The one that you invited people to look at those documents?
This was on the flu vaccine. I've done 2 on the flu vaccine, and the particular one you're talking about contained a link to those documents. And yeah, it's all about primary source info. But you see, I'm discovering things as I go along as well. And I didn't realise that GPs were getting paid a commission, basically, to inject people with the flu vaccine. And it was fascinating stuff, especially when I came across that primary document. But again, on that video, I was very honest that, I could just leave it at that headline and say, look, GPs are getting paid to do this, so they're effectively acting as salesmen. But upon research, it was clearly demonstrated that it's actually the practice, the GP's surgery, that receives that funding. But nonetheless, the GP is still acting as the salesman. It's their practice. They're in it to build the profits. And that's what they're doing. And of course, vaccines for children as well. When you think this is specific to England, and I'm not 100% sure how it works in the US, but certainly in England, there are different services. There's essential services, basically usual ailments, stomach ache, headache, all the rest of it. And then you've got additional services and enhanced services. And the additional services cover child vaccines. And that's where a commission is paid for the children to be injected. The enhanced service that covers the flu vaccine. Again, that's paid as well. And yeah, that's what I want the video to do, is for people to download that document, read the details themselves, rather than me just doing a video saying, this happens, it's absolute fact. Take my word for it. You don't need to do anything else. I'm telling you the truth. I'd rather people look at that. There might be some people that downloaded that document and they read it completely differently to how you and I did. They might have seen something on there that I hadn't. And in that sort of case, it'd be great then if people contacted me and said, well, I've had a read of it, but what I found is there's a contradiction here to what you say. So it doesn't bother me too much if people disagree with me. I think that's the general idea. Everyone has a different interpretation of things, but nonetheless, that from that document, from my interpretation, that is what's happening. And as you say, for me, it's there, black and white. It's how I read it. But how many people know that that's happening when they go to their GP, especially with their children, because that's a really important topic? They're trusting everything that the GP says, and they believe that they have the patient's, that in this case, the child's best interest at heart. And it simply can't be the case if they're receiving a commission scheme for giving out certain vaccinations. It just can't be. Get my opinion, but
Well, if I may add, the essential services, which are the ones that they're not like the flu vaccine. It's, your general scrapes that you go into your GP with. It seemed from the document I read, because I thought I'll just pick a random one as well, one that wasn't vaccine related, because there was all sorts on the page that you directed your audience to. And one of them was totally unrelated. It was cardiovascular. And I thought I'll read this just to see if it's any different. And it wasn't. Even with the essential service, they are completely beholden to their masters. It was fairly benign in respect that they were detailing an error with a system. Something had gone wrong. But as a consequence, there was a huge number of people that had been not misdiagnosed, but sort of misprescribed. They were on the wrong plan. And they're being told, this will generate extra work for you, but it's mandatory. You will receive this extra money to cover these extra costs. But there was no question they would be doing this. But it, like I say, it read like, well, the service schedule on your car has now changed, and as a result, you're gonna have to recall the cars in again. It's like, these are people, But the way it read was so cold, it was untrue. And this wasn't non-essential services. It wasn't what you would describe as commission-based services. This was essential stuff. So just truly frightening. Really, really scary. Maybe we should move off onto a slightly lighter subject, because the vaccine, I know we'll come back to it, but it's a pretty heavy-going subject, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, it absolutely is, yeah, and it goes very, very deep, yeah, definitely, yeah. So, the other subjects on there as well, of course, at the moment, one of the most popular videos I've got is, well, it's titled The Mandela Effect. And I think one of the videos you used as your advertising for this stream, which was the Wheel of Mandela Effect.
The Wheel of Mandela! Where will it land?
Will it be planes standing still in the sky? Will it be birds standing still in the sky? Etc., etc.
Well, let's just give some clarity, because I obviously know the answer to this already, but I assume you give no credence to this No, let's not lead you too much. Do you give any credence to the Mandela effects that you described before the actual, the end one? I'm trying not to ruin the point for when you explain it, so it's hard to do that. But yeah, do you buy the Mandela effect ones that aren't the one that you actually used, if that makes sense?
No, I don't. And this has been such a big headache since I made those videos. And the reason is I've discovered that YouTube is very, very difficult to put any kind of parody or satirical content in general and have people understand what it is that you're doing. I'd say half the people, well, from the comments that I received, from those comments, half vaguely understood what I was getting at, half completely misinterpreted it, and they were congratulating me on becoming a Mandela effect believer.
Oh no,
And
really?
yeah, and it
So they
just
missed the irony
it
completely.
absolutely, and it just what I mean, I had comments saying I was a nutcase for believing the Mandela effect, and then I had comments saying, you're amazing, thank you so much for opening everyone's eyes to the Mandela effect. And I thought, what does it take to be, to just to have some satire and people just to grasp it? But I've taken that into account for future videos, and I'll try and explain things a bit more. But
Well, but before we
yeah,
go
so
further, then I wasn't planning on doing this, but maybe if you can, God, I can't believe we're doing this. Can you detail what the Mandela effect is and why you would consider it nonsense?
well, from my understanding, and I haven't done a huge amount of research into this, and I know there's some absolute fanatics out there, and fair play to them. It's their thing. It's what they believe. My general interpretation, from what I've seen, is that it's to do with parallel dimensions, basically that at some point have crossed over. So certain things that we might remember from our past in one dimension have crossed over, or they've crossed over, or we've crossed over to another dimension, and so these things have changed. And one of the entry points to the whole Mandela subject is the dash missing from the Kit Kat wrapper. And I must admit, when I was just googling this subject over previous months, I did find a picture on the image section of Google, and it was the Kit Kat logo, and it had a dash in the middle. And for a split second, I did think to myself, actually, yeah, I think I do remember it being like that. So I did some more digging, and at the back of my mind, it was always going to be a case of there may have been a dash. However, it's probably just Nestle have rebranded their packaging at some point. So back of my mind was going to be I'll email Nestle if I really have to, and I'll ask them what year they rebranded and removed that dash. That research led me to the Nestle website. And interestingly, Nestle are fully aware of this phenomenon. They're more than aware of the Mandela effect with the missing dash, and they've got a dedicated page to this. And they claim that there never was a dash on the Kit Kat wrapper, never has been. But they do point you in the direction of why the Kit Kat is called Kit Kat, because of a guy called Christopher Catling. Kit being a nickname for Christopher, and obviously Cat, short for Catling. And he was an innkeeper and basically used to make mutton pies. And his name was shortened to Kit Kat, and that's these mutton pies were called Kit Kats. This then led on to the chocolate bar when Rowntree's were first making it to be called the Kit Kat. Now, there's not many people, well, that I've come across speaking to Mandela effect believers who have done any kind of research in, they don't even know this fact, but they're just convinced this dash is missing. And I looked on the archive section of Nestle's website and I found old pictures of the wrappers. And I found one from about my era, which would be the late 80s from how I remember it. And yeah, looking at an actual photograph of a wrapper on their archive section, it is, yeah, I do remember now I've seen it. And I remember thinking, that's a bit strange then. Why did I think there was a dash when I saw this other picture? And I looked into this picture and it turns out it's not an actual image from Kit Kat, from Nestle at all. It's somebody's interpretation of how they remembered it. And this has somehow got onto one of the front pages of Google when you do this search. So a lot of people are going to be seeing that and getting a bit confused. But it leads on to many, many different things. Planes standing still in the sky was one of the first things that got my videos going about it. People actually think that jumbo jets can literally be stationary in the sky, and they think it's the Mandela effect, some sort of rip in, the dimension or whatever. And the video I did on that was very satire as well, and people misunderstood where I was coming from there too. Something else as well, dark rings around the eyes. People are convinced, they look in the mirror now, look at their eyes, and they can see a dark ring. And they're convinced that years ago, when they were more youthful, they didn't have this dark ring. So there's been some sort of crossover in dimensions where now people have dark rings around their eyes. Again, you do just a little bit of research into this subject, and it's a perfectly normal thing, this dark ring around the eyes. Most people have them. It comes with age, surprisingly. So the older people get, the more prominent this ring becomes. It's as simple as that. But no, I don't. I can't find anything about the Mandela effect that really says to me it's an actual thing. On the flip side, could there be different dimensions? Could there be parallel universes? Possibly, maybe, I don't know. But there's no evidence from what we're being shown from the Mandela effect community that it's an actual thing. It's actually happening. All of these things can be attributed to just, you remember things differently, or movie taglines change slightly for franchise purposes when they're selling merchandise and whatever. A whole host of things. But yeah, that's where I stand on that. It's not something that I follow at
Can I
all.
tell you mine? Because when you come across one of these, and well, maybe you don't. Maybe this is unique to me, but I'll just tell you. So, I won't mention his name. A former guest explained that he was a very avid Star Wars fan and knew the movie inside out, back to front. Knew it because he'd watched it hundreds and hundreds of times. And he said that C-3PO never had one silver leg. And I was compelled to afterwards debunk it. I probably pissed him off royally by doing this, but pretty much the next video was me explaining how this was not possible, but explaining how the conclusion that would be drawn by many people would be that he didn't have this silver leg. And the reason I could debunk it was because I worked in AV, so I was working in a shop in my hometown at the time. This is in the 90s, and we were selling laser discs. They were like the most cutting edge thing that you could buy. And we would hunt out this very, very, very expensive particular copy of Star Wars called a Criterion Edition instead of just the widescreen edition. Some nonsense. But we had a guy, Rob the Laserdisc Hunter, who'd go out, find these discs specifically for customers. And the reason you'd pay £150, £200 for this set of laser discs was because it was better quality. And you could get a customer to go into your demonstration room with a massive screen, put on Star Wars, and get them to see things that they hadn't seen before, therefore parting with huge sums of cash. One of the things specifically would be C-3PO's leg. In other words, you'd watch your VHS copy of it on your CRT TV and you wouldn't notice. It would be too subtle. There wouldn't be enough colour definition. But you'd come down to my demonstration room with line doublers and 8-foot tellies, and you could see it. It was much more obvious. Same with the sound, same with a whole bunch of other things. Things are obvious when they're massive. So to me, having watched that film countless times and pointed out to people with, fairly substantial wallets, look, you can see things in your movie that you think you know really well. I'll show you. And when they're going, oh, I never saw that, you'd go, yeah, now pay me, take all this equipment home with you. But it was one of those that for everybody else, the chances of, the tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of hi-fi enthusiasts that would have had that experience with that specific disc, with that specific movie on tens of thousands of pounds worth of equipment is so slim that you can understand the vast majority of people getting to the stage where we are now with Blu-rays, where it's super high definition on a normal sized TV. Suddenly they notice and go, oh, that wasn't like that before. Yeah, it was. You just didn't see it. Anyway, very, very tedious. I'm gonna change the subject slightly from Mandela, because there's a couple of things. One that the audience will love that you've covered, which is flat Earth, but the other's no trees. Again, a pet peeve of mine. Mandela and no trees. Ugh. But anyway, we'll start with flat Earth, because you covered another satirical aspect of fake news when it came to flat Earth. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
That came from well, it was supposed to be a ban on Facebook of flat Earth groups and I think pages as well. They were apparently all going to be archived, and that was going to be it. No more would be allowed. There'd be no flat Earth discussion. The 1st of August 2017. It doesn't surprise me that Flat Earth got trolled like that. Um, but what was surprising was the amount of people that believed it. And that's not just flat earthers, but people in general. Of course, the globe Earth believers were getting very excited about it. Um, but it did show to me that how willing people are just to believe something. There was no background to it, no detail to it, but you do a little bit of research on the internet, and then you do find out where the news came from, where the information came from. And it was just satire, basically, a satire article. And you read the article, and they've made it so satirical that it's just unbelievable. It's really quite funny. But yeah, I mean that was that was no snipe at Flat Earth itself, but it was just people believe in it. You think, why? What's going on?
I think the simple answer is that they didn't read it. They just read the headline, maybe one or two lines, and whoever's written it knows this. Knows it only too well, because it got more satirical as you read down the article. But you only had to read it to realise that it was a complete nonsense. But you get people who literally just read headlines and go, "Oh no!"
That's it, yeah. And it finished up with a Facebook spokesperson saying, "Don't mess with Zuck, okay? Just don't."
This is
But
Mark
it was
Zuckerberg.
funny. It was a good laugh. Yeah.
Yeah, it was basically somebody who said that, claiming to be a spokesperson for Mark Zuckerberg, saying you don't mess with him. It's like, this is a professional company. They don't send tweets out like that. This is total nonsense.
That's it, absolutely, yeah, yeah. But then it is worrying, like you say, people only read the headline, or they might read the subheader if they even get that far. Um, so yeah, I do like to point these things out. And yeah, of course, it does make some people angry when you do that. But there's not a lot you can do about that, really. But I think it is important just to try and give people a nudge and just say, it doesn't matter what you believe in, it doesn't matter what your views are, whatever it is. Don't be fooled by these things. Don't be so gullible to things.
So the other one that was similar sort of vein was the no trees, which I thought was priceless, especially for the people who fell for it, just because of the picture and its origins. So again, can you tell us a bit about the no trees headlines debunked video?
Oh, no trees. Yeah, I think it was Devil's Mountain or Devil's Rock. I can't remember what it's called now. But yeah, there was an article put out where there was apparently like an X-ray image of a root system underneath this mountain. And it was said because obviously, as we know, the story goes that all these mountains are the remaining tree stumps of giant trees. So someone had put together a fantastic article and really gone to town saying that, yeah, this root system has been discovered. And of course, it turns out that the image of the root system was real, but it had nothing to do with that site at all. And it was something like only a few inches deep. It was just a standard root system that you'd find anywhere. But they put it together, and they'd constructed this story. And again, you could see that being shared around Facebook constantly, indiscriminately. People just literally seeing it, and they get really excited, so they like it and they share it. And of course, they go and tell other people that this is the new discovery. Again, just simply reading a headline, no consideration for what the actual story is, or for what it goes to say about people just wanting to have their beliefs confirmed. So people that do believe there were giant trees one day in the past, again, absolutely fine. There's no issue with that if that's their thing. But it just shows how easily, they can be led. And it makes you wonder where they've got all their other information from as well.
Well, one of the primary sources that you've pulled from is your past experience with the schools on a first-hand basis. So has there been, are your kids all left school now, or how are you involved with that?
Yeah, we unschool now. But there was a time when we didn't. And yeah, I was a school governor for about 2 years. And it's one of the most eye-opening experiences that you can ever have, because you get a real look behind the scenes of how schools work, specifically primary schools. And you'll hear people talk about agendas, and there really is an agenda with schools. One of the most notable being it's it's a safeguarding policy in schools, basically to try and spot children, not to call them terrorists, but just to highlight children that are susceptible to becoming radicalized into terrorism. And teachers are advised to look out for pupils who seem distant from their classmates, distant from their peer groups, social groups. So if your child is, let's say, a bit of a loner, perfectly normal, they enjoy their own company, they don't need to be with a large group of people. And sometimes they might just like to sit at one end of the classroom and just chill out a bit whilst all the other children are going crazy. That is a child that would be highlighted as a possible target for radicalization. That then needs to be reported to the relevant authorities. There's a secret register for social services. So they're used, well, I mean, it's always been the case if a child was getting changed to PE and a teacher saw the child covered in bruises, they would, of course, report it to social services straight away. But for smaller things, a child's behaviour appearing to change, a child becoming unruly, a child becoming withdrawn, this is all recorded in a register at the school for social services to see. So social services will come in every now and again, they'll read this register, and parents are absolutely not allowed to see it. They're not allowed to be told that their children are on that register. The wording to explain why that is in case the parent catches on that, you know, they might be investigated, or, you know, their child's behavior has been spotted. They worry that the parents will then take the child and run. Absolutely ridiculous. So the relationship with the school and the parents is completely broken down now. And then you've got the transgender issue as well. And this was one that really came into play quite recently. So children will be encouraged to explore their genders, which is a bit crazy within itself. But you would have boys dressing up in girls' clothes, girls dressing up in boys' clothes, and it would all be, you know, the whole idea would be to get children to think about being a boy, or do you feel more like a girl? And it sounds very cliche, but it's actually happening. This is what's going on. So it's not a good scene at all. I mean, there is a lot more, but I'm sometimes a bit cautious about what I talk about, and you know, obviously got a lot of documents and things that I could never share. But basically, everything I've said there is factual, so there shouldn't be an issue with that. But yeah, these things are going on, and a lot of parents have absolutely no idea, and it's completely wrong. They don't know just how much the school has taken over, just how involved the school is, and of course, how much the school is connected with the relevant authorities. And they will literally turn on you at a moment's notice. And there used to be that, you know, the old saying that, well, if you've done nothing wrong, if you're not abusing your child, you're the perfect parent, there shouldn't be an issue with any changes in behavior being recorded and then social services being called in. But you would really have to trust social services, and you have to ask why this register exists in the first place.
I mean, you said already primary school age, but just for people who may not know over in the States, what age are you talking specifically, just for context?
Well, mainly 5 to 11 would be the age group.
So these are children.
Yeah, these are vulnerable children. Every child that age is vulnerable and susceptible to ideas being given to them. We already know how school indoctrinates them with its curriculum, but this is something different. This is something that parents have not signed up for when they send their children to school. It's
Absolutely
something
not. I
they
mean,
should be
you
aware of.
could see me off camera with my jaw wide open. This
Yeah.
is news to me. I mean, can you maybe you've said already you don't want to necessarily give too much detail, but you said that they're getting kids to literally explore their gender identity in primary school. This is horrifying.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, get them to think about it, to discuss what it is to be a boy, what it is to be a girl, dressing up in the clothing. It goes very deep, and this is part of their PHSE education in primary schools. So it's become part of the curriculum, but it's not a nice thing to see, and it's something that I couldn't agree with. I don't think many people would if they knew the true extent of what's going on. Of course, the children, they don't know any different. You know, they're going to school, they're with adults, the teachers that they trust, and they just go along, you know, with the flow. But no, it's not a good situation.
just, I don't know, I'm slightly lost for words, but there we go. Just to keep on track, I'll get to a point that won't leave me stuttering and quite horrified, which was the inability. I actually played half of the video on the OBS stream, so if you didn't see the video at the beginning, maybe flick over on the link below. There'll be a link to the OBS stream, which will continue when we round out this show. But on that video, you explained that it only takes one phone call to inquire specifically when they'll be administering the live vaccine, and they won't tell you.
That's right. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to do this. If you have a child at primary school, even if you don't have a child at primary school, ring the school and ask what the date is that they're doing it, and you'll find they won't tell you. They'll either just completely blank you, or they'll refer you to the community nursing team or community health team. Phone them, and they won't tell you either. And this is a subject where, rather than saying it's absolute fact and it's the truth, I'll say it's from my observations, and it's my conclusion, is in children with the flu vaccine, they use the nasal spray, and that contains the live vaccine. And what I did witness firsthand was when they first started introducing this into schools, my children came home with fevers on the day that it was administered. And I've spoken to other parents as well, and their children actually came down with flu-like symptoms, and they hadn't received the flu vaccine. So it's my opinion that children are being used as live carriers to spread the flu within schools, because let's face it, in years gone by, how many flu epidemics in school do you remember? I don't remember a single one. There'd be the usual coughs and colds, and of course always the sickness bug as well that you can't get rid of. But flu outbreaks, so you've got to firstly ask, what's the need for introducing this flu vaccine to school children? Because there doesn't seem to be one. But when you look at it as it being a live virus, and the children that receive it, they become contagious, and they are spreading it to other children. So, of course, completely, everyday normal parents that don't give it a second thought, they might initially start out one year thinking, well, I'm not going to let my child have this vaccine because they never had the flu before, they don't need it. Well, guess what? That year, your child's very likely to come back, if not with the flu, then with flu-like symptoms. Next year, that parent's more likely to say, actually, this year, I'm going to let my child have that flu vaccine. And it's the profit cycle, it's creating the customers. And it's another reason why I don't think the school will tell you the date, because parents who are awake to this, or parents who are suspicious, would just keep their children off school on that date. So they want all the children in there. To me, it's as simple as that. That's what I see going on.
One of the other things you listed was how they categorise new vaccines. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Do you know where I'm leading you here?
No, what's the...
So you explained that the flu vaccine, which is a new vaccine... Oh, no, it was the I've forgotten the name. It was a multiple vaccine that had 4 ingredients, which was most definitely a new vaccine, but it wasn't on the new list.
That's right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. That's where they've introduced the hepatitis B jab for babies, very young children. Starts, I believe, with the 6-week, then the 8-week, then the 12-week. And of course, hepatitis is not something that a baby or a young child is likely to get. But on the NHS site, it would usually have listed what the previous vaccination schedule was, but they had changed it before this new schedule came into play. So this new vaccine appeared on the NHS website as the schedule, the list of vaccines for children, without any reference to it being new at all. So any unaware parents looking at the website, before this hepatitis was due to be added, it was there on the website. So they would quite clearly think, well, it's run of the mill. It's nothing to worry about. They've been doing this for a long, long time. It's obviously perfectly safe. But of course, it's actually brand new introduction into a regular schedule for all children. It's not something that was done before. And they should have highlighted that. They should have highlighted the fact this is a new vaccination. And they should have been singing and dancing about it. How wonderful this is. It's another addition to fantastic vaccines. It's going to keep your child safe and healthy by doing this.
Isn't it wonderful? Come and get it today. But no, they just slipped it in there, and it was very dishonest in the way that they did it. Again, just so that parents would have absolutely no idea and would think it was completely run of the mill.
Again, after reading some of those reports you linked to, it does, again, it sounds like they've just stuck it into the service schedule. Oh, actually, it seems like that car needs spark plugs as well at this service interval, so we'll just stick it in, and anybody who's on the service schedule won't notice. Anybody who's bought a new car will think it's always needed spark plugs at that time. Just bonkers.
Absolutely, yeah. It preys on ignorance, and well, it's just a really effective way to get the vaccines introduced, cause the least amount of fuss possible, keep the uptake rate going. And of course, here in the UK, our anti-vaccine movement is pretty much non-existent. And I say non-existent purely in the sense that it's so small, it has a completely insignificant impact on what's going on. Compared to, say, you see in the US or mainland Europe, they have big anti-vaccine movements. A contributing factor to that could be that they obviously have mandatory vaccines, or in the US, it's mandatory in the sense if you want your child to attend public school and certain institutions and use certain services, you have to have your vaccine schedule filled out. But certainly mainland Europe, there are many vaccines that are compulsory, and parents will be fined and risk having their children taken off them if they don't comply. So obviously that would have raised people's suspicions, and I think that was a big part of getting their anti-vaccination movements going. But here in the UK, it's 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 put across to us as being completely your own choice. No pressure. It's not mandatory. You don't want to do it, don't do it. And that's what people have in their mind. So of course they say, well, nothing wrong with it then, or we'll go and take the vaccines. But nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, people that I feel really sorry these days for people that having their first child, people that are aware of the damage or what they see the vaccines as doing. They're really bullied these days, midwives, health visitors. They're really at risk of just being cajoled into the system and having these vaccines given to them. Because there's very little research that's actually done by anyone.
I don't know if this is too personal a question, but have you always been anti-vax, or were your kids vaccinated and then you became anti-vax?
No, it's a good question. I mean, I'd start by saying I would class myself as being vaccine aware. I mean, I know I've just used the term anti-vax many times just then in the last ramble, but when it comes to talking to people outside of that specific community, when you're talking to, health visitors or doctors, I wouldn't recommend saying that you're anti-vaccination, but always class yourself as vaccine aware. It makes it a lot easier on you, and opens up doors for much less stressful conversation. But yeah, I mean, I have three children. The eldest, we were completely asleep to everything, and he had all of his vaccinations, no problems at all. Middle child, we started the vaccine schedule, and then our, lovely child that we knew, completely, went to the GP and came back a completely different child. So we saw firsthand the results of vaccine injuries. And the thing is, we can only really class that as, when we're talking to people, what is it really? It's just anecdotal, but to us, it's our empirical evidence that, we've seen firsthand. And from what there is of the anti-vaccine movement in the UK or anywhere, it's largely made up of people that have experience, or their families have experienced suffering of some kind due to vaccine injury. And that's what changes people. That's what gets people to actually start researching. So, I mean, that's when I changed. When that happened, that's when I really started researching and thinking, there's a lot wrong here. And the child that we've recently had hasn't received any vaccinations and won't receive any at any point. We're completely set on that. But the choice whether to vaccinate your child or not is very, very personal. And I don't think there's any sense in trying to debate people who are completely fine with them. I don't believe there's anything that I can say to them that will ever change their mind. Unfortunately, this is one of those topics where you have to experience it firsthand to get that passion to actually really wake up to what's going on and look further into it.
I mean, I'm encouraged to tell this story based on, I think it's probably your latest video, or maybe it was your first video, I forget. I've watched so many of your videos recently. I'm a fan, I'm not going to lie. I really, really like your work. But one of the things you were pointing out was that you're kind of like an investigative journalist, if I could wrap my tongue around it. But you encourage people to sort of document what's going on. Just basically be a journalist yourself, and that's kind of what you're doing. But you said you pity people who are having newborns now. Well, I was in that boat 12 months ago, or a little over 12 months ago, and it was horrendous. I'd absolutely decided and presented all of the information I could to my wife, got her to do her own research, and we together came to the conclusion we did not want to vaccinate our child. But after a horrendous birth, a C-section, emergency C-section, that was the point that we had, and I kid you not, minimum, it was probably more, 10 doctors coming up to us trying to, browbeat us into having vitamin K injected into this brand spanking new baby that's just come into this world. And you're like, no. And, they're kind of taken aback that you're saying no. Well, why not? Oh, well, we must get this other doctor to come and ask you then. And that went on until we left the hospital. It was just unreal. They really, 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 really wanted us to inject that baby, our baby, with vitamin K. And you're like, no, we don't want it. At the time, we had our excuses lined up because we kind of expected this to happen. But my wife was taking vitamin K supplements for breastfeeding. And it's like, this isn't necessary. There's not going to be any vitamin K deficiency here. No, thank you. It's not needed. That should have been sufficient. But like I say, 10 doctors later, you're like, why are we still having to have this conversation? Why is everyone coming up to us with clipboards and writing this down like we're doing something wrong? As you say, we are presented with this as though it's free for us to choose, free for us to say no. It's not mandatory. It's not law. So, I can say no, I will say no. Same applied to leaving the hospital. The doctors didn't want my wife to leave. Her and I both were adamant she wanted to go home and get rest in a 50-degree heat of the hospital. I kid you not, it was ludicrous. It was like an oven. Never been hotter in my life. All these women all faint. It's like, we want to leave. Oh no, your wife's a bit teary. We want to keep an eye on her. It's like, yeah, because it's 50 degrees and she's not got a cot for a baby. I say all this knowing full well that the NHS is built on the National Health Service, the British medical institution, is built on the principles that it should always seem not sufficient enough. It should always seem inadequate. That's the word. In other words, if it's always presented as being inadequate, it will always be striving to be better. This is just NHS spin and bullshit to make it seem more palatable, but that's how it's dressed up for the layman who's sitting in an NHS waiting room reading some of the founding principles if they've got them on the wall. But it's fascinating to know some of the stats of places like Italy. I think it's 1 in 10 people don't vax, which is, in a classroom of kids, that would be 3 kids in every single classroom that aren't vaccinated. Whereas I would imagine that in most schools, the entire school, there's a very good possibility that there's not a single child who hasn't been vaccinated in that school in the UK. That's pure guesswork and hyperbole, basically. But would you say that's pretty accurate?
I would say I would say you're about right there. I now worry about children that are vaccinated being around my children. The old cliche used to be, keep your unvaccinated children away from my children because they're a risk. But now I think of it the other way around. I want to keep away from children that have just received vaccines and they're shedding because, they will be highly contagious. But yeah, the reason why I don't jump at people that don't have the same beliefs as me, or they seem to have rather extravagant beliefs in different things, is because, you're talking about the hospital and trying to leave. There was a time when I didn't realize you could discharge yourself from a hospital. I was that indoctrinated into the system and reliant on authority that I just had no idea it was an option. I thought when you went in hospital, the doctors decide when you stay and when you leave. That's what I honestly thought. I also thought you could go to prison for not paying certain bills, like a mobile phone bill. I actually thought you could go to court and have a custodial sentence. So I understand people that haven't really woken up to anything at all, you know, at this point in time, because I was exactly the same.
Yeah, you're talking about a subject I didn't know you were going to cover. Maybe this will come up in some of your future videos. Maybe you'll be doing some return to sender videos. Who knows? Is that something that's on the horizon?
No, no, I used to follow the Freeman of the Land movement quite a while ago now. It's not something that I put much faith in anymore. I think there's a few things that are a bit misleading there. I think the Freeman of the Land movement, I mean, just quickly, I think in principle it's absolutely fantastic and it's right. In practice, the corporate system that we live in, the judicial system that we have, it simply doesn't work. You know, all these escape this fine, escape that fine, just send this letter saying this and so that. You know, yet again, theory absolutely brilliant, but practice, no, I don't think so. I mean, one of the biggest ones was the TV license, the big movement to not pay a TV license. One of the biggest words of advice that used to be given out was put on your door the notice of removal of implied rights of access. That used to be pushed really heavily. What they failed to tell anyone, and it came out at a later date, was that the TVL or Capita only need, I think it was 2 or 3 reasons to apply for a warrant to search your premises. And this removal of implied rights of access was a tick box on one of their reasons to apply for the warrant. And of course, it was completely unnecessary anyway, because you simply don't communicate with the people if you do happen to open the door and speak to them. Just don't engage in conversation and close the door. And you see a lot of videos where people do engage in conversation. They try and speak all the freedom of the land terminology. And again, I think what they say is probably accurate, but it doesn't apply. It just doesn't apply in the system that we live in. So I mean, that's my thoughts on that. So I don't think I'll be doing any videos about it, you know, unless something comes up in the future. But yeah, I tend to keep my distance from it, to be honest.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, you've certainly covered things like we're getting into videos now that I've not actually watched that you've made. So, but I've seen on the thumbnails that you've got videos about dinosaurs. Now, I'm saying this with a smile because I'm assuming that you think dinosaurs are not real. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm not dropping myself in it here.
What do you mean they're not real, Nathan? What are you talking about?
I mean, yeah, sorry, this might be news to you. No, no, well, no, I'm not going to lead you. You tell me. What's your view on dinosaurs?
I think the dino industry, the dinosaur industry, is a massive, massive profit-making machine from funding from governments. There's every time every time I look into a new dinosaur discovery, there's always a backstory to it that just is so suspicious. It just brings the whole story down. One of the more recent ones that I looked into, this was in Canada, and there was this guy working in a mine site with his excavator digging away, and he came across what was said to be, you know, an extremely rare fossil. Now, luckily, he lived very close to a dinosaur museum where he was. So he phoned them up, he called the experts out, they came and assessed it on site. They instantly knew exactly how old this fossil was. They instantly knew exactly what the creature was. They knew everything about it. And of course, I think it was about five or no, maybe it's 7 years later, they had finally dug the fossil out of the rock, chiseled away at it to finally reveal what it was. And lo and behold, it was exactly what they said it was going to be. But this guy that found it, who lives near the museum, he'd visited the dinosaur museum the week before he made the discovery. I mean, okay, there's no real evidence there, and you know, but come on, really? I mean, I had to dig back through the articles. I found an article from 2006 where it was revealed on the week that this fossil was found. That original article revealed that this guy, they said it was purely by coincidence that he'd visited the museum the week before. And that's where it had all the details in about how they knew how old it was and what it was. The very week they found it, before they'd even taken it off site to examine, they knew everything about it. So I don't put a lot of weight in these dinosaur discoveries. They're always bringing new ones out again, you read the story, you look behind the article, these aren't new discoveries at all. These are fossils that they found years ago and have been held in collections, and they've just now decided to reclassify the species. They're creating species of dinosaurs out of things that they've had for years and years and years. There's actually nothing new really going on.
So, what's your motive? What do you feel their motivation is then? Because I would say it lends, or for them, it lends credence to evolution. And many of the stories told in what I call the heliocentric deception. So you have meteors coming from space crashing into the Earth. But why do you think they fake us with dinosaurs?
Oh, I agree with the fact that it's to bolster the evolution story. Absolutely is. I mean, it's one of the key components to it. I think that's how it started out, and now it's carried on so far that it's become an industry that's all about the money. Of that find that I was just talking about, the museum received a substantial figure from its government for finding this fossil so they could do further research, and that just continues on and on and on. Hence, as well, the new discoveries. But it's also yeah, the new finds as well that they're reclassifying species. That again is just to keep it's to stop people forgetting about dinosaurs. It's to always keep it at the forefront. You know, anything that has a major blockbuster Hollywood film about it, let's say about Jurassic Park, where it brings to life the dinosaurs, it brings a visual representation for people to actually see. There's always going to be something behind that. There's going to be a reason why they've done it. But yeah, it is to bolster evolution. I'm not a again evidence based, perhaps not, but I'm not um, a believer in the evolution theory, not in the way that they tell us when we've got no fossil records of one species transitioning into another species. They can make certain claims that they have proofs of species adapting. That I can just about understand. But the actual transition, there doesn't seem to be any record of it. And I think it was documented that Darwin said that in later years, that fossil record would be found that would prove what he was saying. Yet, I mean, let's assume he did say that, then there still isn't that fossil record that's been discovered. And their dating of things as well. When they talk about millions of years ago, I can't help but just slightly switch off because really? They say they use carbon dating, but carbon dating has a certain precedent of only so far back. It doesn't, you know, there's no actual precedent to go back millions of years. It's purely guesswork.
Yeah, it's a whole load of mumbo jumbo. I think you've summed it up quite nicely. There is no real truth in any of what they tell us about dinosaurs as far as I can ascertain. It's all just complete hokum and there to prop up. Even the timeline kind of makes no sense to me because according to their own timeline, is it 60 million years from when the dinosaurs got wiped out till now? Well, based on their own evolutionary nonsense, there's not enough time between then and now. Maybe they would argue that it was only a 99% wipeout of the species that are on Earth, but even then, you think 60 million years on their time frame is just nothing. From then to now, for us to go from, I don't know, I don't even want to get into this. It's just such bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I absolutely agree. Yeah, it really is. It's fantasy. That's all it is. But people believe it, people love it, and people will try and debate you with their scientific facts, which come from a scientific community that's extremely dogmatic. There could be no free talking, free thinking there. And that's what they base their arguments on. It's basically secondhand information that they've been told. But you have groups of scientists that again follow precedents set from other studies that they've been told exists, they've been told is accurate. So they base further studies on that. It's just a mishmash. It really is. Obviously, it goes very, very deep, but just as a general, you know, broad overview of it, yeah, absolute fantasy.
I'm going to round out by talking about possibly my favourite subject in this arena, which is, I've not asked it in the way I'd normally ask it. My ordinary question to most guests would be, how did you find out the Earth is flat? But I'm not going to ask you that question. I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, which is, how did you first find out that NASA were faking space?
Um, well, I think as I started to wake up to certain other lies that we were told, or certain things started to fall apart, the stories that we'd been told, I think it started with, for me, on the NASA side, was obviously the moon landings. And from there, you look into it, and it's as much fantasy as the dinosaur story is. When
When
they
was
say
that?
that you've got, what's that?
When did you come across the moon landing hoax?
Oh, this was a few years, well, yeah, a good few years back now. It's one of the first things that I sort of identified. Um, and when you've got two probes that were supposed to have been sent into space in the late 70s,
Right, we're talking
that are
Voyager now.
apparently Voyagers, yeah, that are apparently still out there now exploring the infinite galaxy, sending back messages somehow, and now you can have a tweet sent to the Voyagers. I mean, that's a hell of a strong signal to be sending stuff back and forth. It just, I can't put any weight to that whatsoever. Um, but on the flat Earth, I mean, yes, I'm not a flat earther because I generally try and avoid labels. But what I will say is, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if it did turn out that the Earth, or what we live on, is flat. Wouldn't surprise me at all. It would surprise me if it turned out to be a globe, as in the model that we've been told all these years. It doesn't instantly make me a flat earther, and I don't think something in the middle, like a concave Earth, anything like that. But it's just a case that I've come to terms with the fact. It's a purely personal thing in my own mind. There's only one thing that would ever prove it to me. And I know there's some fantastic research that flat earthers do. The research from the globe Earth side of things tends to be just regurgitating the facts they've been told. There's many things about that that don't add up to me, and I can't comprehend in my mind. Globe Earthers would say that's because I have a low IQ. That's fair enough, but nonetheless, my sense of reasoning doesn't allow some of those things. But the only thing that prove it to me is, if space was, as we've always been told it was, this big, vast expanse above us, I would literally have to see what we live on from up above, from in space, so high that I could look down and actually see what it is. Now, I know that that's never going to happen. And so, because of that, I can never conclusively draw to one side or the other. I mean, there's other options, about what it is that we live on as well. And it can offend people sometimes when I say that, because, as I mentioned, flat earthers, they do some really good research. They do come up with some good things, and they put a lot of time into that, weeks, months, years, looking at these things, gathering their evidence. And when I say to them, well, that's great, but I still need that one conclusive proof before I commit to one side as a belief, or, accepting as a proof, they do think I'm insulting their research, which isn't the case at all. The globe Earth side, obviously, as I said, they regurgitate all their facts. I don't often see very open discussion from that side of the camp whatsoever. And one of the biggest problems for me is comprehending the fact that somewhere approximately below me, I'm told, are people standing upside down, planes flying upside down. To a globe Earth believer who believes the mainstream explanations they're given, that what I've just said probably sounds completely ridiculous. Well, of course they are, but it's not how you think. But no, at the end of the day, that's what we're told. My brain can't comprehend that. That's why I say I'd be surprised if I did go up so high, I looked down and there was a globe Earth, because I still wouldn't be able to process it. But nonetheless, it would be what it would be. So that's where I stand on it. And I did follow the flat Earth scene. Well, I haven't this year, but certainly the last couple of years I did follow it. I remember when Jeranism started his channel, and Mark Sargent as well. I do remember those things starting off, and it was interesting to look into. I think some aspects of it drifted off slightly onto different courses and whatnot. But I began to realise that, as I say, I just simply couldn't accept one model or the other until actually seeing it with my own eyes. And for the record, I'm not completely convinced that space is what they tell us it is either. Stars certainly being so many light years away, it just it doesn't work in my mind at all whatsoever. There's certainly much, much more to the place that we live than what we're told. Hence, what I perceive as NASA's fakery being, but it all comes together. But yeah, I know a lot of people don't like people that sit on the fence. They don't like people to sit in the middle. And as I say, I think that's largely because they take offence. They feel that their evidence is being rubbished, but it's not at all. You know, we all have our different reasons for why we think what we think. But I'm open-minded. You know, I'm not interested in arguing with people about it. But you know, happy for people to believe what they believe, and you know, we'll see what happens in the future.
I think you'd find that if you chatted to the majority of intellectually honest quote unquote flat earthers, me being one of them, I would detail it exactly as you did. And the very first video I made with my... No, it wasn't the first video, it was the first live stream. So my wife fired up a live stream to test it, and we were testing out Google Hangouts, and eventually, 30 minutes in, we started talking about flat earth. And the conversation we had was exactly what you just said, which was, I had to explain to her that, well, ultimately I can't say it isn't a globe because I can't get high enough. And if somebody like me, Joe Bloggs ordinary, not a Freemasonic guy in a NASA suit, normal guy, goes up high with a Kodak camera and goes click and comes back and says, here you go, it's a globe. I'd have to look at it and go, I'm going to have to reassess what I think. You know, that's the bottom line here. And the reality, probably why they've angled it this way, is, as you so succinctly put, you can't do it. I can't do it. So we can't check. We can't verify what they tell us. So in terms of most of the things that I've done well, certainly with the sun tracking, its purpose wasn't to prove a flat earth. It was to debunk the current standing model, to show that it didn't work. And most flat earth work is exactly that. It's debunking the heliocentric model. Yes, obviously there are some, as you point out, fantastic research and fantastic proofs out there, and people actually going out onto the land and showing it to be flat, which is kind of what convinces me. But as you correctly point out, until you actually get up high enough yourself, this is where the conversations with the trolls and myself end. It's like they say, well, your standard of proof is to get up that high. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And I can't do that. You know, so if I am completely honest, I have to say the same as you, which is that in real terms, I can't get high enough to see it. But that means that if you are to accept that it's a globe, you have to take it on faith. And I'm simply not prepared to do that, which is where my love affair with the globe ends. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm prepared to put hand on heart and say, if it was, by now they'd have exactly what I'd described. You know, we'd have day trips up to space. What they described us with Virgin Galactic. Do you remember? You'll go up to space. You'll go out into the outer atmosphere. Yeah, it'll only be out and then coming back again. But man, did I want to do that. You know, I fully signed up to... Do you remember they did Lynx? They might have done this over in the States with Axe. But we had the Lynx Apollo program. I was fully signed up to that. I was trying to get everyone to support me and get all the tweets on Facebook because I wanted to go up and have a look. That's the bottom line here. And we can't. You know, I've accepted that now. I don't think there's very much up. You know, I don't think we can go very high. That's the reality of the situation. In other words, because space has been misrepresented, they've always got that argument, well, you can't go up high enough. But we aren't testing the limits of how high is up. You know, they're just telling us what is up, and it goes on forever. And that's kind of nonsense. So, can you give us a few plugs for what's going to be coming up on Headlines Debunked in the future, please, Lee?
Yeah, I might readapt my satirical content a little bit to try and avoid confusion. But
No,
what I want to do is
it's wonderful. Don't change anything.
Thanks, I want to keep putting certain subjects in with other topics to, you know, try and show, you know, like with the Mandela effect and the vaccines, I intermingled those two topics to reach a different audience. I'm going to keep on doing things like that. Vaccines will still play, well, they play one of the biggest roles, I think, on the channel. Certainly this time of year, as everyone's getting sick. But yeah, no, there are other things that I have in the pipeline, but they'll come to fruition as they develop. But presently, I'm looking to do a couple of videos next week. I've been away for the last week, so I haven't really been able to do much. I did have a couple that I put up ready to go, but now I'll have a little bit more free time. So yeah, I mean, just keep watching. If you like, there'll be a lot of people that say, this guy, he's not telling me anything. He's not giving me any evidence. He's not giving me any proof. There's nothing in his content whatsoever. That, you know, that's absolutely fine. People that say that are 100% correct. There aren't going to be any proofs, scientific evidence in the videos. But if you enjoy thinking, if you enjoy sort of opening your mind to the possibilities of new subjects and new topics and a new way of thinking, then certainly watch the videos. But make sure that you have that in mind. But yeah, that's about it, really, to be honest, Nathan.
I was going to say, for me, that's the best part of it. Zero conjecture, raw data, facts. Brilliant. Just brilliant. You've got a fan from me anyway. I hope everybody who's watching subscribes to Headlines Debunked, because for me, I've been hooked ever since you made your first video. Brilliant, brilliant channel. Wonderful. So yeah, thank you very much for being on Flat Earth United. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Lee.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, and thank you for having me on as well. It's been great.
And I will say it once more for all you who are watching on this live stream. Be sure to subscribe to Headlines Debunked, and of course subscribe to Nathan Oakley. Make sure you leave a comment below. Subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. I will see you all in the next video. So we're done, but
Still live.
Yeah. There's still a behind the scenes one that probably has less people watching, but yeah, so that's that bit done. Proper show though. Well, hey,
brilliant. No, yeah, thanks again, Nathan. I was meaning to ask, how did you come across my videos? Did they come up on recommended
no, I can tell you exactly how I came across it. So John LeBon made I think either you commented on John LeBon's video or he commented on yours. I think that's how I came across it. But
yeah, I commented on his. That's
yes,
right.
that would be right. You'd have commented on his.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah, just but that's for anyone watching the OBS stream still. That's a word to the wise. You know, you see an insightful comment like I did of yours. I couldn't actually remember fully, but yeah. So you made an insightful comment, and I've gone, I wonder who this guy is. Oh, he's got content. Interesting. Let's have a little look, and so on and so forth. So yeah, you've only got to make a decent comment. I mean, I'm the worst culprit for that. I used to get quite abusive with the trolls in the comment section, so probably wasn't the best advert for my channel, but there we go. You certainly did. How have you found it then? 300 subscribers. I don't know, is that good? Has it grown quickly? A couple of months. That's not so bad, I suppose.
Yeah, it's grown fast. One of the Mandela Effect videos that I put out, I think when I looked earlier, it was up to 12,000 views, which for a small new channel like mine was pretty good. Yeah, it kicked off. But it's the reason why I had so many different topics and styles, was just to try and see what worked. I think I finally figured out, maybe not that the magic combination of what I need to do, but I've got a better understanding of YouTube now. And of course, what I realize as well is your number of subscribers doesn't always equal your number of views. You know, you can have a lot of subscribers, but then you need to get them watching the videos as well. So I've got to work on that. You know, I think my last video that I put up was the vaccine price is right, and it's only got something like 80 views on it, which you would think obviously more people, but I think what happened was, with those Mandela Effect videos, a lot of the Mandela Effect supporters had come across and subscribed, perhaps, for the wrong reasons. So I'll probably lose half of them tonight, Nathan. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I certainly don't expect to grow your numbers exponentially just by being on someone's show, because in the early days of me making these sorts of videos, there were, not me, but other people who would go on Patricia Steer's show, and they'd be all, reared up and excited, and then afterwards they'd have a massive low because they'd expect something to change or something to happen, and you might get 1 or 2 more subscribers out of going on shows, but you just got to do it consistently. It's more about getting your face around, really, and once people have heard your name 5 or 6 times, then they might subscribe to you if they like your content. But it's just a numbers game, isn't it? You just got to get around, get your face in front of as many people as possible. I tried to get this on the show. I was trying to get to the root of what motivated you to do this, because I still can't quite wrap my head around why. Because you've come in guns blazing, for a skeptic, they'd say, "You've come out of nowhere." That would be the way they'd phrase it.
Well, it was the CIA, Nathan. They said, "Here's a channel."
I'm not for one
You
second
got-
suggesting there's anything nefarious in this. It's just, I don't know. For me, I was making videos anyway. Then I found out the Earth was flat, and I was like compelled to make videos. You know, I don't know if it's the same for you. I didn't get to the root of that. That was all.
No, it really is just to voice it to an audience, because it gets really frustrating when there isn't, a physical group of people around you to really have a discussion with. And I wasn't on Hangout. I mean, before I started doing these videos, I wasn't on Hangouts or anything. And I really just wanted to get my voice out there, just to say stuff. That was literally, it gets it off your chest. And that's why the first videos started off like those articles. I was just, it's an article I genuinely would have seen just in day-to-day running of my life. I hadn't looked for an article to make a video about. I'd literally just, browsing through the phone, found an article. And then you get those thoughts of, oh, for God's sake, I can completely see what the agenda is here. I can completely see what the lie is and all the rest of it.
What was that with the gas
And then,
explosion?
no, not with the gas one, but like with there was satellites. It was early part of doing the vaccine videos as well. And I just wanted to broadcast it, to get it out there. But I did take a lot of influence, I think, from John Le Bon. You mentioned him earlier. And I watched a lot of his videos. I did follow him quite frequently. And he's far more blunt than I am. If you haven't seen any of his stuff, it's very, very blunt. But the general idea of being open-minded, sort of, that's what I took away from his bits and pieces. I know he's gone over to his website now, so I don't see him about much. And that's what I really wanted to convey in my videos, was rather than say, as I say, that this is absolute fact or this is truth or whatnot. I just wanted to say, have a think about it, see what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's as I said on the show. That's the bit I liked about it. The fact that there's very few videographers. John Le Bon is one of them. That after you watch a video, you start to question your own reasoning, your own beliefs, the structures in your mind in terms of how you're processing things. Not many videographers make me go, I really hadn't considered it that way. I need to do more research. I must go away and look at this more. Funny though, with a lot of John Le Bon videos, you'll read through the comments. So you'll be watching the video and then you'll read through the comments. And you know why he's going away from YouTube, because he says stuff like, don't subscribe to me. There's a lot of people that I don't want watching these kind of videos. And you read through the comments and you go, yeah, you mean you, don't you? This is the person you don't want watching, because YouTube's quite toxic. This is why I was trying to get to the root of why you came on here, or have found yourself on YouTube, because yes, it's a wonderful place to get your voice across, but it's so toxic. I'm sure you must have experienced this already. Within 3 months, you'll have had some unpleasantness. I have no doubt whatsoever.
The abuse is horrendous.
Yeah.
You sometimes think, where have these people come from? I mean, they must literally they do it as a hobby. They must go on YouTube with whatever account they're using and just go along all the videos and just leave as much abuse as they possibly can. But I just took the line that what I do is basically shadow ban their comments on the channel. So I think it's a case of they go onto the comment section, but only they can see them, that sort of thing. Rather than getting involved in debate with them, or any kind of conflict, because I just see it as completely pointless. There's two types of people like that. As you know, there'll be people that do it because they're deliberately on the wind up. So, there's nothing you can say to them that would change. But then there's other people that have genuinely become offended by something you've said on a video, and they really are genuinely mad and they want to let you know about it. And those people, again, I don't see I could get very far by engaging with them. So I just, blank them, shadow ban them, and leave it at that. But yeah, you're right. It does appear to be very toxic. And as I said before, when we were doing the show, trying to, when you use humor in your videos, trying to get people to understand it, I've realized now is very, very difficult. People take everything on face value. They just, yeah, it's strange.
I find it weird too, but like I say, I got the irony immediately and thought it was hysterical. Just that to me is the best kind of comedy. That's the idea of comedy. You lead somebody down a road that they think they're going, and then you take them down another road. That's your punchline. That's the essence of comedy. That's what comedy's all about. So you go in thinking, is it going to be about this particular Mandela belief? To me that was genius because it pisses in the face of Mandela, which really winds me up anyway. We didn't say this on the show, but just the namesake annoys me. You being from Britain, I'm sure you've got the same thing going on as I have. When you hear just the words Mandela effect, just grates just hearing it, just the title. And when you hear the reasons why they've got that, you're just like, the reasons for the title alone are based in ignorance. Surely that must tell you it all. But no, people still believe it, which means that they must ultimately buy into the namesake. The Mandela effect, the original Mandela effect. Him dying in jail. People must believe that shit. It boggles belief. But then when you know that, you think, well, it's not surprising they don't get basic humour. So
That's it. Yeah, no, you're quite right. Yeah, was he dead or wasn't he dead? I don't know. But yeah, you're right. The things that they use to prop up their beliefs, it makes you realise how susceptible they are. Someone with the wrong intentions could quite easily, come along and take advantage of these people. Well, actually, I think they have been already with the Mandela effect, but it keeps them occupied, and it's amazing how big that scene is. I've realised because of the views I've got from people thinking that I was a believer in it. And I've looked into some of the channels, and it's huge. It really is. I mean, and they're absolute fanatics with it. They really, really are.
but
And
this is
what they
when
say is these smaller things like the dash missing from the Kit Kat wrapper and such like that we find so ridiculous. They justify that by saying, well, it's an entry point into the Mandela effect. It gets people involved. They see these smaller things and then they move on to the bigger things, which I guess is like planes standing still in the sky. There was even one video I watched, and it's about birds standing still in the sky. That was apparently due to the Mandela effect. But
there's two things with it. One, it's completely undebunkable. In other words, you can't contest the Mandela effect. You'd end up in the biggest circular argument ever because it's physically impossible to debunk it. But there are instances, the examples, that you can debunk in 10 seconds. I mean, like you with the Kit Kat wrapper. I'm not saying it only took 10 seconds, but with some research, you can find out how the deception has come about, why the misconception has been foisted upon people, if it's been foisted upon people at all. In the case of the Kit Kat wrapper, it was. It's high up in the search results of Google. Therefore, my argument would be, well, Google have put that high in the search results. Therefore, IPS says it's standard media practice, the Mandela effect. To fiddle with things, to change things, to alter stories. That's standard practice. But what you are highlighting is, who gives a shit about the Mandela effect or the Kit Kat wrapper or Luke, I am your father? It's totally unimportant. When I got criticism for this when I used your chunker video. Someone was like, 1 in 50 is not half the children. Oh. And you're like, oh God, jeez, you're trying to wring some people's
I received
neck.
that exact same comment actually on the channel when I put that video up. Yeah, they just love to point it out. 1 in 50 is not half. Well, really? And there's no such thing as a Mandela wheel either. Jesus.
Yeah, but the point is that there's some very, very serious things that weren't the same. Not Kit Kat wrappers and strap lines to movies, but like you say, the fact that there's suddenly autism rife. And that is rife. When I was in school, there was no autistic children that I can remember. Not that I can remember. Now, 1 in 50, if you've got, let's say this is a small school, but let's say there was three classes per year, you'd have a couple of autistic kids in each year. You go, well, that's huge numbers. It wasn't like that yesterday. That's what they call the Mandela effect. Things that were rings around the eyes now weren't rings around the eyes before. Well, who gives a shit even if it was true? But, suddenly when there's a health issue, this is something we should be looking at. And this is why I got so frustrated with the Mandela effect in the first place. Same goes for no trees, because you have the trolls in Flat Earth saying, you're here to muddy the waters. You're here to distract from the truth about 9/11. It's like, no, there genuinely is a deception being perpetrated by NASA. It's glaringly obvious to even some of the intellectually honest trolls. Some of them will admit, yeah, there's not something dodgy about NASA. It's like, yeah, there is something very, very dodgy about them. So why do we care about the Kit Kat wrapper and about whether or not it was No, I Am Your Father or Luke, I Am Your Father? Or whether it's Sex in the City or Sex and the City? Who cares? Literally there's more important things going on. And if there's huge amounts of cash being stolen, and there's a massive lie about where we live, then surely that's not muddying anybody's waters. But Mandela effect is, no trees is, it's just a distraction. That is, for me, pure entertainment. It has no value whatsoever, other than to take the piss out of it for entertainment, for me. But to look at it with seriousness, like, no, this is the way forward, this is what we should be looking at. It's like, no, right now, 52 million today spent at NASA. Huge, huge sums of money to deceive us. That's important to me. Anyway, rant over.
No, I completely agree with you. Absolutely. They just go completely over the top and completely takes their attention away. Even just our control system that we live under, something as simple as government and exposing how that system actually works and what's above it, which is the really important thing. No interest in it whatsoever. And it worries me that so many people are so involved with it that, what goes through people's minds, I just don't know, but yeah.
Well, I think it is cleverly orchestrated. I hate to use this term, but if you were going to label something a psyop, that would be it. A massive distraction, a rabbit hole that leads nowhere. And when you consider that some of these things, I didn't actually know the example till you gave it with your research in terms of the Kit Kat wrapper. You go, well, it's not nefarious, but it kind of is when you think that the amount of people that are following it that are literally distracted by that. You could list there's dozens of subjects like this, that reptilians, just allegory for psychopaths, but spun out into complete nonsense, shape-shifting, slitty eyes. You're like, oh, God. All this while $52 million a day is spent deceiving us about where we live. I think, and this is pure speculation, it's because there's more land. They tell us it's the one thing they're not making any more of. Well, why do they tell us that? Well, why would there be any need to have hundreds, if not thousands, of incorrect representations of land masses? Why have we got fake maps galore? Why are none of them actually representations of where we live, if they know full well that there's no more land? Well, you've had enough time, if there isn't any more of it, to figure it out to the inch. You haven't. That's worrisome. Probably because there's more of it. There's probably more land. But there we go. We're into the realms of speculation now, and I may end the behind the scenes stream as well before we do spark too much speculation, and I'll destroy your reputation before you've established it fully.
No worries at all. No, yeah, nothing would surprise me in this day and age anymore. And yeah, there clearly, obviously, is a reason why NASA has done what it's done, why it's conducted the fakery that it has, and yeah, it clearly goes far beyond the money. It's obviously the deception there. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that any one of these theories is correct about where we live, without a doubt. But as I said earlier, I would be surprised if it was a globe Earth, as in the model that we've been taught all these years. Because even with space, the whole idea of space that was sold to me as a child was this huge, vast expanse, and to be in space you'd be so high that when you look down, you would see what we live on. Of course, at the time, I'm told it's the globe. But then you find out exactly how high satellites are orbiting, even the ISS. They tell us it's in space. The images that they show us, to me, that isn't space as we were told. That's not the idea that was sold to us at all. That, they're showing images from high up, granted, but they call that space. Something doesn't connect there with me at all. But yeah, it's the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about. Did you say you homeschool?
Unschool, but yeah, homeschool. Um,
What did you say?
Termed
What was the correction? I didn't catch that.
we unschool. So
Unschool.
basically, yeah. I
Unschool.
mean, it's just pedantic, but it's just what people say in the community, because otherwise, I mean, the idea is that you get away from the whole school system, you get away from that curriculum format which you'd find at school. So the old term of homeschooling would really just imply that you're taking all of that and you're just doing it at home. You're basically
Ah, I
bringing the school
see.
into your living room.
So homeschooling
So yeah,
implies that you're following their curriculum just at home.
that's it. Yeah.
Right.
So it's referred to being unschooled now. Basically, of course, it's exactly the same thing. But if you hear the two terminologies, that's why people say unschooled. But yeah, that's what we do.
Well,
It
what
works
is it
for
that you
us.
do then? So I'm lost now. So what specifically what do you do? You're not following the curriculum, or you have to follow the curriculum, or what's the score?
No, you don't have to follow the curriculum at all. You have to demonstrate in certain areas that you are providing an education that is monitored. But that education that you're providing can be an absolute entire range of things. A day trip out to the park or such like, as long as you can demonstrate that there's been some education in there about the trees, about the land, anything you want can be included. And that's basically how the new version of homeschooling goes. But yeah, so you don't follow the curriculum. You can do it completely as you want. And I'd recommend it to anyone that has the means to do it. I know a lot of families aren't in the position where they can do that. Um, and I know the reasons why, and hence why we see so many children end up in daycare, literally from 7 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening.
Well, this is
Um,
pertinent because I am in the position to do that, and the reason I'm in the position to do that is because I didn't want to put our kid into daycare. So the way it worked out was my wife and I structured our jobs so that it means our relationship suffered, although we have a good relationship. So we still get on well and all that stuff. But she comes home from work, I go to work in the evening. I finished shortly before we started this show. But what that means is that our child is under our care continually. Now, this is a very recent thing for me. I've only just started considering it. But as I look at the schools, which I walk past in the day when I'm walking around telling my 13-month-old child about what the tree roots do as we're bumping over them, it brings a smile to my face when you say that. Because you think there isn't a moment that goes by that I'm not teaching my child something. Normally far more complicated than a 13-month-old should be being told about how root systems of trees work when you're bumping over them. But as far as I'm concerned, the more I tell her, whether she can speak or not, the more she'll learn. And when that comes to maths and English and the sciences, the same will apply. There's no reason why she won't be, like my niece, bored to tears with me telling her. I feel guilty about saying this, but back in the day, before being a flat earther, I was telling her what the planets were in NASA terms, and in retrospect, I think I feel quite guilty about that. I've just parroted their nonsense to my niece, and with my kids, she won't get the same indoctrination. My niece, this is in school. So, given whatever it'll be, 10 years from now, she'll come out the other end and she'll be completely indoctrinated. Whereas I really can't bear the thought of that for my own kid. I just can't. And knowing that I am in a position to homeschool, unschool, I want to do it. I really want to convince my wife of this. I'm sure there are, I'm going to use this word, but curriculums that you can follow so that they're not missing out on vital maths or stuff that I may not, as a layman, understand how to educate in a certain way. But I'm sure there are guides that you can follow or whatever that just aren't government-based indoctrination curriculum guides, basically? I mean, I'm asking more than anything.
No, yeah, there absolutely is. I'll a bit later on, I'll send over some links to some groups that we're involved in, and they have plentiful resources galore that you can follow that cover basically what you've just said. And most people think exactly the same thing. There's a reason why they're doing this, excuse me, and it is to get away from the education system and everything that it's about. So yeah, you can follow those guides if you're not confident about teaching the maths, at certain aspects. Then yeah, that those resources are there for you, and designed for that exact purpose. So yeah, the possibilities and the freedoms that you have are fantastic. And of course, some of the opposition that you'll hear, not that anyone has a right to oppose what you're doing, but people will talk about the socializing aspect
Going to be my
and
next
say,
question.
that's it. They'll say to you, well, how are you going to socialize your child then if they're not in a class of other children? How are they going to become socialized? How are they going to learn things from each other? And it's quite simple. School is not socialization. School is forced association. You're forced to associate with a group of your peers. That's not socializing. Socializing is when you take your child to the park or you take your child on a day out and then they're playing with other children on the play equipment. They communicate with other children. That's socializing. They're not forced to do it. They're not locked in a classroom with the same group of people throughout their entire school life as they get older. They're not really socializing at school at all when you think about it.
Not at all. They're prepping them. Have you ever heard this when you've been in a work environment and somebody will say, it's just like being at school? Like, many a true word. Because it is exactly like being at school. You're sat behind your desk. I mean, I've never been able to hold down one of those types of jobs. I'm generally driving or out and about doing things in the open air, as opposed to sat behind a desk and a computer screen. No disrespect to anybody who does those jobs, but that's just not my nature. I just couldn't cope with it. And it was the same at school. I despised it. I was an unruly kid because I just couldn't. I don't know. I'm not wired in that way. Some people aren't wired in that way. I know I'm not wired in that way. And desk jobs are like school. So as far as I'm concerned, they're just prepping you to be sat in exactly the same circumstance with a person in charge, a hierarchy. The headmaster is the area manager, if you like. It's the same exact structure. And like you say, it's not sociable. At work, you're not there to socialise. You're there to do a task. And in school, you're not there to socialise. You're there to do a task. Fulfil this task. Do it in a timely manner. We'll check if you can repeat what we have made you fulfil at the end of the term.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, institutionalized, isn't it? And of course, you see nowadays all schools, they're completely fenced off by the large fencing now, the lock gates at the front. Well, schools never used to be like that, but they do seem to mimic also the prison environment as well. But like you say, absolutely geared to the work environment, but also to prison. I guess it's just an institution thing whereby they're locked in. They have that set schedule. They're told that they learn to be told an exact time when they can eat. They learn to submit ultimately to authority, which of course is a fantastic thing for the government. This is exactly what they want, the younger generations, never questioning. And there's a fantastic meme that I saw. It's been going around for years now, but it's basically, it's in a classroom and the children are represented by small tree trunks. And it's set in
By
the
what?
scene
Sorry, I
of
didn't say that again. But represented by what?
represented by small tree trunks. So wooden tree trunks are meant to be the children, and they're on the chairs in the classroom. And there's a larger tree, which is obviously meant to represent the adult, stood in the doorway with his younger tree, obviously meant to be his child. And he's clearly taken him to school for the first day. And he's a normal round tree trunk shape. And they look into this classroom, and these other tree trunks, again meant to represent children, have all been shaped into a square shape by an axe. And obviously, the meme idea is that you go to school with a completely free mind, you're a complete individual, and then these children are all shaped into the exact same conformity. And that's what the environment does. And like you say, that preps perfectly for work to go into an office environment. In fact, it just fits in perfectly to an institution where you're molded to be all the same. You're all exactly identical. But of course, one of the things is schools try and preach individuality. They try and say nowadays, all children are individuals. We recognize that. But then they treat them all exactly the same. They take away that individuality. And in secondary schools, I mean, one of the things that we have a massive issue with, the reason why we took ours out completely, is this it's a segregation. I can't remember the exact term for it now. Isolation, that's what they call it. And you see news reports constantly that they're putting children into isolation because they got the wrong shoes on or they got the wrong haircut.
Oh,
Um,
detention.
yeah, but basically detention. They call it isolation. So they're put into little individual booths, again, like the office environment, like they're at an office desk with the sides up around them. So they're completely isolated and they're made to sit there in some cases all day long and do book schoolwork in front of them. So they don't get any interaction from anyone anyway. And that's the punishments that are being dished out to them for simple things like the wrong shoes, the wrong hairstyle, wrong hair color that goes against the school policy. It's crazy. And then people say, well, why do parents allow that to happen? And it's quite simple because when they send the child to school, they make an agreement with that school that they'll follow the rules and they're agreeing to these rules. So when they're broken, that's the consequences that they dish out to the kids.
It's unreal. The parallels. I mean, I was going to draw the parallels back to prison. They have to ask permission to piss. They're put into isolation. These are prison rules, basically. But in terms of the office environment, I've experienced that firsthand. So for a very short stint, I did 3 months in an estate agent that was also a bank. So Halifax is a estate agent / bank, was a building society. Anyway, I moved from a job selling houses, again, out on the road, actually visiting and putting houses on the market and selling them. But it was a on-the-road job. And when I moved jobs, I very quickly realised that their idea of what that job entailed was very different to mine. And they didn't want me going out on the road. They had someone specific to do that. So I was in the office. Horrendous. And because I was quite loquacious, they literally stuck me in isolation in a room, sealed, where I only had a phone and my list of clients to phone. And I was told, you're going to be in there all day. In other words, they put me into isolation. Like I say, it didn't last very long in that particular job. But just prepping you for the work environment. It's one that to draw these parallels is really difficult because I'm not a child anymore. I remember detention, but it wasn't called isolation, and I didn't think of it as being punished in the work environment like we are discussing here. You can't draw those parallels, but you can. We are, and it's obvious once you think about it. But the more we talk about this, I don't want to put my kid through that. I just don't. Did all your kids get unschooled or homeschooled?
Yeah, all of them apart from the youngest. Yeah, well, I mean, the middle and the eldest were in the school system, so they've been brought out now. Our youngest will never enter it. So yeah, all three will be at home, just away from that environment where, it's the best place for them to stay away from school, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's certain things that every time I hear about things that they're limited from doing, so cartwheels. Cartwheels for me, I remember girls doing cartwheels because you could see their pants. I remember that from school very vividly. But nonetheless, you hear now that they're not allowed to do them in the playground. And you're like, what? This is just health and safety gone nuts. That's part of playing. Becoming a fit and healthy adult. If you, yes, there's a chance you might break your arm. But that's part of growing up, isn't it? That's part of the fun. But it seems like all that's been sucked out of it. There's no fun in school. There is no socialisation. There's just pure indoctrination. And half the stuff they're teaching them, I'm contemplating, how am I going to unprogram my kid from the nonsense that they're going to tell them at school? I'm already contemplating how to give them the alternative. It's like, well, the rational person in me says, Why unprogram this crap from them? Just don't let them be subjected to the crap in the first place. Then there won't be any need to have to untell them what they've been told. You know what I mean? And explain why they've been told this incorrect information in the first place. This for me, telling that in 5 years' time to a 6-year-old, that's stressful. I just don't. I can do without the stress.
Yeah, no, I don't blame. I'm completely the same. No, but yeah, I do hope you go with that idea, and you have success with it, because it is a fantastic thing, and I wish more people do it. But like I say, I understand that there are people that can't for the various reasons, and it's different for me, because as a family we can do this like yourself. It's possible, but for anyone that is awake that can't do that, then it must be extremely frustrating for them to know that their children are in that system. And like you were talking about undoing the indoctrination, I think people in certain truth communities, or wherever, just generally awake people, need to be very careful about what they say to their children about the truth, because if they're still in that school system, you've got to be careful about what they repeat, because the school's not going to look at it very kindly. It's all going to come back to you. And we have a very, very difficult, social services system in the UK that is definitely not a very fair system, and people, do need to watch out. So that's the only advice I'd give to people that have children in school is just be careful what you tell them, and maybe drop very light hints, but wait until they're older and left school before you start unindoctrinating them. But it's each to their own. Whatever people want to do, they know their children best, and
Yeah. I think on that note, I'm probably going to go to bed and say another thank you for hanging around and chatting for the people who were in the behind the scenes audience. It's been a real pleasure once again having you on.
Thank you, mate. No, it was great again, and I really appreciate the opportunity. All right.
So hopefully see loads more videos from you. I'm going to do one more call to action. So for any of you who are still with us watching this extended OBS stream with Lee Harris from Headlines Debunked, make sure you do subscribe to his channel. I will stick a link to Headlines Debunked in both this and the Google Plus Hangouts on Airstream, so you've got a direct link to one of his videos, so you can hit that subscribe button, and again hit his bell notification so you get instant updates when Lee Harris releases a new video. Same goes for me. If you're new to this channel, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon so you can get constant updates from Nathan Oakley with vlogs and interviews and panel shows. In the meantime, make sure you leave a comment below on the re-upload. I've been Nathan Oakley. I will see you all in the next video.